The trilogy which dominated the headlines this year was of course Canelo vs Golovkin. And in the end, it was a disappointing final installment, as both men looked to have a much more tactical bout than going for broke to win. However, with the upcoming trilogy fight with Juan Francisco Estrada vs Roman Gonzalez, I believe we will have a much more exciting and action-packed encounter. The pair first met 10 years ago in 2012, with Chocolatito putting on a convincing display during his dominant flyweight run. However, since then, Gonzalez and Estrada have taken different paths to get to this point. Gonzalez went on to win 12 consecutive fights to become the top pound-for-pound fighter in the sport, with a record of 46-0, before his back-to-back defeats to Rungvisai. Many wrote off the Nicaraguan making a comeback, saying this was the end. However, since these fights, his performances have continued to improve, and clearly still has a lot more in the tank. In terms of Estrada, who lost to Chocolatito 10 years ago, he would then go on to win 17 of 18 fights, with his only loss coming to Rungvisai as well, who also defeated his rival. However, the difference between them, Estrada would get his revenge in the rematch, unlike his rival. The two would both eventually clash again last year in 2021 in a very competitive fight, with Estrada getting the nod from the judges in a split decision. With over 2,500 punches thrown in the fight, a division record, many felt Gonzalez did enough to win, myself included. However, there's no denying that Estrada did have success in the fight, and when you consider the number of punches both men were throwing, it's always going to be hard to score some rounds. But on December 3rd, we will get to see them battle it out one last time, as the winner will no doubt be set up against the new rising star Bam Rodriguez. But now, let's take a look at both men individually on what tactics and approaches might be required to win come fight night in this unmissable rubber match. First up, let's look at the legend of Chocolatito. For me, the 4-weight world champion is simply the epitome of the classic boxer you want to become. He uses a textbook stance with a solid base, while using a correct guard to help him block and parry punches, all while applying effective aggression and pressure on his opponent, before throwing beautiful combinations with variation each time. Sometimes watching Chocolatito is like watching high-speed chess. He's always trying to be one step ahead. He'll change angle out of nowhere, he'll keep coming forward even after taking a big punch, before returning himself with something just as big. However, Gonzalez is not indestructible. We have seen him be beaten, and he does have some flaws that have let him down over the years, including having an overly aggressive style of fighting at times. This was of course evident in his fights with Sor Rungvisai, who was the much bigger and more dangerous power puncher, as he knocked out Chocolatito in their second fight in devastating fashion. In a way, it reminds me of Frazier vs Foreman in that respect. It doesn't matter how aggressive you are, a bigger and stronger puncher with good timing can benefit from those that keep coming forward. However, so many wrote off Chocolatito after those defeats that he could not make a comeback. Successful fighters are those that have things that work well for them. But great champions are those that can accept and understand defeat. It's about investing in loss. It's an essential skill to be able to understand why or how you possibly lost without reverting back or continuing your old habits. Roman Gonzalez, for me, since then, has learned to slightly adapt his style, being willing to take a step back sometimes, to see what's in front of him and make sure his guard is in place before engaging. In his second fight against Estrada, he clearly was more cautious of his power punches in the first couple of rounds and looked to rather counter him instead. However, when Estrada felt he was comfortable and had chalk at the end of his punches, this is where Gonzalez would take his chance to fight in bursts of intensity and volume, making sure to land as many as he could. Personally though, I'd like to see Chalk try to use more angles when up close on the inside. There's probably still the ghost of Rungvisai in his head that this could expose him. but I think it will help him land more cleanly on Estrada. And in their first fight against each other, this was something Roman Gonzalez had much success doing, as the Mexican can get complacent sometimes trying to just stand his ground. Gonzalez can easily keep trading and throwing combinations, but Estrada is still best when you're right in front of him and can land just as well. If Choc is going to stand there and trade with El Gallo, he needs to use elusive upper body movement. In his last fight versus Martinez, who is actually meant to be Estrada, we actually saw some of these added improvements to his game plan, where he would use his high guard defense with upper body movement to draw in and counter Martinez. Also really tried to get to the body of Martinez in this fight, all to create openings up top, and this worked an absolute treat in landing clean, effective punches. Estrada can be known to drop his hands at times, often to protect his body, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see Chocolatito trying to do the same again. The footwork and the high guard defense with upper body movement leaning over the front foot made it difficult to attack Choc cleanly at times. However, old habits can prevail, and he still does get caught up in a barrage of punches on the inside, and this is where he needs to be careful not to get into a war with Estrada. Now let's look at El Gallo. Estrada for me is a very well-rounded fighter with good hand speed, technique, and ring IQ. Now sure, he might not have the intense pressure-like style like Chocolatito, or be a huge puncher like Rungvisai, but he is just as an intelligent fighter in my opinion, who actually does have the ability to change up his game plan if plan A isn't working. When you consider he's fought everyone in the era with wins over Chocolatito, Rungvisai, and along with some other very tough flyweight competitors, you can't ignore the fact he's been able to compete with them all and win a lot of them convincingly. In his rematch with Gonzalez, he opted for aggressive power jabs and powerful 1-2s to keep the Nicaraguan at bay. And for me, the Mexican is best when he has a bit of space between him and his opponent. However, as much as throwing so many power punches can keep someone off you for a little while, the number of punches he does throw can result in fatigue and him taking a step back, as we saw in the last fight. Estrada is also a lot better at boxing on the back foot, and with Gonzalez being quite hard to hit cleanly at mid-range due to that high guard, he needs to look at throwing around the guard with his right and left hooks more often, by looking to occupy the guard to tighten it before going around. Usually when these types of punches do connect on Gonzalez, he looks to reset himself before engaging again. This is the perfect opportunity for Estrada to get to work on Chocolatito, and it will force him back into a position he doesn't like to fight in, and that is going backwards. The other area I believe Gallo needs to target is the body of Chocolatito. The Mexican throws beautiful, well-timed, accurate left hooks to the body, but it's a lot easier said than done due to Gonzalez's guard, but he needs to slow him down to stop the barrage against him. Estrada also uses powerful right hands to add power to that traditional Mexican left hook, and like I said, these power punches offset the Nicaraguan to reset himself, while also grabbing the attention of the judges. Nevertheless, as much as I think Estrada is overall a much more versatile fighter in different ways, I can't help but be alarmed by his performance against Cortez in September. Sure, there was probably a bit of ring rust there, but he was getting quite careless at times, getting countered easily after throwing his right hand or jab. He also has a tendency to get sloppy once he feels comfortable, and can get caught up in unnecessary exchanges on the ropes, quite often getting into a war just like Chocolatito. However, he does usually always find a way to get back on track by working on the outside again using his jab and combinations. But for me, it's more the mental battle of being able not to let the smaller man push him back in this fight, and to really capitalise more on his power punches and size. In terms of my prediction, it's once again a really hard one to pick, as I personally felt Chocolatito did enough in the last fight, but Gallo did enough to make it a very close contest, especially when you consider how many punches were thrown. You just have to look at the punch stats for both these men, and it's ridiculous how many punches they throw and land in a round, and that's why it can be quite a hard one to score. Both of them have their own flaws too, and I do think this is a 50-50. However, you're only as good as your last fight, and I can't look past Chocolatito's performance where he clearly went back to the drawing board and really adjusted and refined his approach, as evidenced against Martinez, who was a tricky customer. Whereas Estrada, as much as he had good moments in the fight versus Cortez, was making lots of mistakes and getting caught up in the inside and the ropes far too often, which is exactly where the Nicaraguan will want him in this fight. So for me, I have to go for Chocolatito to win this rubber match. If he can apply a solid game plan like before, with discipline and variation in his attacks, I think he will win in a close points victory. Whatever the outcome though, I have nothing but huge admiration for both these men. They will go down in history as two of the best from the flyweight divisions. I have no doubt they will put everything on the line for this one, but due to the ferocity and volume these men fight at, it may just come down to who wants it more. Let me know in the comments below who you think will win this fight. Will Chocolatito once again come with a solid display, or will Estrada make the adjustments to finish off the Nicaraguan once and for all? I'd love to hear your thoughts. This has been Jamie from Boxing Life. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.